Now let's go ahead and see that how we can perform a post request when we're using the Fetch API. Now, if you go through the documentation of OMDB API used on the website omdbapi.com, you will not really find any way to perform a post request. It's most of them or all of them are pretty much all the GET request. And it is up to the owners of OMDB API that they even allow the post request or delete request or put patch request, but looks like they don't. It looks like they only allow GET request. So we can't really work with this particular API if we want to post something. And by post, we mean you're creating something, you're sending the data to the server so that the server can do something with it. So we need to find an API that can allow us to perform a post. And that API, or one of them, is this one. This is called the Coffee API. So I've written this particular service, which is Coffee API, and it can allow you to get all the coffee orders. It can also allow you to post an order, delete an order, and so on. This is using a free service called Glitch, where you can also create your own server. If I go right now on the URL, you can already see that there are no orders being created. If I go to the orders API URL, it returns us an empty array, indicating that currently we don't really have any orders. If you look at the documentation, they do provide a way to create an order. For creating an order, we have to use HTTP post. We have to use this URL for creating an order, and we have to pass in the parameters in the body. These parameters are email, type, size, and price. Once we pass all these different things, an order should be created. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. In order to do that, we do have to create our interface a little bit differently. This means that instead of using a UL to display, the first thing we need to do is we need to create some sort of a form or text fields so that we can get the data. So we'll start with creating a text field, which is simply an input. Input type, text, and we will put the ID as email text box. So I'll say email text box, just giving it a little bit more descriptive name. If I go and look at our implementation over here, I can now see the email text box. Let's go ahead and add a placeholder to the text box also. So I'm going to say placeholder, and we'll say email. Great. Don't worry about this red thing that you see over here. It has nothing to do. It's some sort of an add-on that I have. So you won't really see it on your computer, unless obviously you have that add-on. I'm going to go ahead and add more text boxes to this. So let's see what else we need. We need type, size, and price. So type, meaning what type of coffee it is, hot, if it's just a plain black coffee, cappuccino, Americano, and things like that. So I'm just going to be a little bit more descriptive over here. I'm just going to say coffee type, text box. And placeholder will be coffee type. We're just building the interface, nothing else. Let's go ahead and add one more. In this case, we can go ahead and add size also. So size text box. And over here, we will also call it size. And finally, we have for the price. So I'm just going to say price text box. And this will be price. Great. If you look at our screen right now, we have all of these different text boxes. We can go ahead and also add a button to perform an order, place order button. We're also going to give some sort of an ID to the place order button. So I can say place order button. Great. Inside the app.js, we have a lot of code that was dealing with the movies. We actually don't really need all that code because we're not even using the movies API anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. Let's go ahead and find out the URL. The URL for our coffee orders is pretty much the same in all the cases. So just going to say coffee URL and assign it the coffee URL. Next, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and try to access all of these different or the values from all of these input fields: email text box, coffee type text box, size text box, and price. We'll start with email text box. I'm going to go over here and simply create a constant email text box, document.getElementById, something like that. Next, we will have a coffee type text box. So I'll have a coffee type text box, document.getElementById, and coffee type text box. Great. Next, we will have size text box. The name or the ID of the element has nothing to do with the variable names that I'm giving over here, but I usually like to keep them the same. There we go, size text box. Next up, we have the price text box. So let's go ahead and add the price text box. Currently, we have now access to all the different text boxes that we have on our screen. We also need to get access to the button, place order button. So let's go ahead and get access to that also. Document.getElementById and then place order button. Next, I can go ahead and add an event listener for on click or just click and fire some sort of a function, anonymous function. Whenever we press on the place order button, a click will happen and this function gets fired. Now inside this function, we can go ahead and place an order. So I'm going to go ahead and create a function over here and I'll call it place order. This function will be responsible for placing an order. So I'll say place order. Great. Next, we need to get the values from all of these text boxes. Email, which will be email text box dot value. Coffee type will be coffee type text box dot value. Just getting the values from the text box, nothing else. Size text box or size, coffee size, or what is it called? Let's say it's called size text box dot value. And then we will say the price. In this case, the price we wanted to convert into float. So I'll say parse float, and we will use the price text box dot value. Great. So now we have all of these different things: email, coffee type, size, and price. Now we can go ahead and make a request to the URL, which is indicated by coffee_URL constant. We'll use the fetch API and pass in the coffee URL. But if we try to do this, this means that we're trying to perform a GET request, because by default, if you don't specify the type of request, it will be GET. We need to specify that this is not a GET request, but a POST request. So we'll add a comma and add our first item over here, method, which will be POST. We also want to help out our server by saying that what is the headers of this request. Headers simply means that we're going to tell our server that we are sending you content type, in this case, application JSON. So I'll say content type. Let's go ahead and add content type and application JSON. Great. The other thing that we want to do is we also want to add the body. The body is the most important part because the body is basically saying the data that you're trying to send to the server. We need to send in the body exactly as it is shown in the documentation. This means that when you're sending the body, the name of the variables or the property names should be email, type, size, and price. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and create an object over here and name it email. The value will be coming from email, type, which will be coffee type. Then we have size, which is size, and price, which is price. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at what we just typed in. Email is simply the name of the property. We are using an object over here. The value of the email, which the person is going to type in the text box, will be assigned to the email property. The type is the name of the property. So all of these email, type, size, and price are the name of the properties, and we are naming them in a very specific way because on the server they have told us in the documentation that they must be like this. The order doesn't really matter. Email, type, size, price, I mean, you can do whichever property name first, it doesn't matter, but the name of the property must exactly be same. This means that if you go over here in the second one and you change the property to coffee type, it's going to be a problem. And the reason it's going to be a problem is that when you send the data to the server is going to be using these keys or these property names to extract the value. So what property do you think that the server will not be able to extract? Well, let's see. Are we sending a property name email? Yes, we are. Are we sending the property name size? Yes. What about the price? Yes, we have the price. What about the type? Well, not really. It's called coffee type. Well, that's going to be a problem because the server is only trying to extract the information from a property named type. That is why they have written it in their documentation. So let's go ahead and change that to type. When we're posting something in an HTTP environment, we can't really post an object like this. We have to convert this object into some sort of a format that HTTP protocol can understand. This means that you can post any primitive type, which includes integer, string, array of integer string, boolean, double, float, all of those things. But you can't really send in an object. So we need to convert this object into string. So how do we do that? Well, we have the object over here. We can call a function called json.stringify. The json.stringify function can stringify, can change an object to the string representation. So all of this, what we're passing over here, is a valid object because it does have a key. All of these are keys, and each key has some sort of a value. So it's a valid object. And stringify is going to convert this object into string. And that is something that we can pass on to the HTTP. Let's go ahead and see if it actually works. We're going to go back to our page. Whenever you're dealing with calling HTTP server or sending a request, it's always a good idea to see the network tab. The network tab is going to tell you all the different things that are going on the network. Currently, you can see that when we load the page, a couple of different things are going on. When I simply load the page or refresh the page, some resources are being downloaded. One of those resources is index.html file, which is fine because everything is inside index.html anyways. App.js, That's because in our index.html, we are downloading app.js and some sort of a WebSocket, which is used to run internal server, which has nothing to do with our Coffee server. It's just so that it can live refresh. Let's go ahead and enter something over here. johndoe@gmail.com, coffee type. How about I'll just order a black coffee. Size, I can just deal with a medium size, and the price can be $5. Always be looking at your network tab, because anytime you're going to post or get a request, it's going to be displayed somewhere over here. Let's go ahead and place the order. There we go. We do get some information. Let's see what's going on. Looks like we are sending the information to the server. And the server did actually send you the response back, which is great. Let's go ahead and take a look at the payload. Payload simply means that this is the stuff that you're sending. If you don't see in your post request payload option, this means that you're not sending anything on your post request. You can see that whatever I typed in and whatever I'm sending as a body, that is added to the post request. The response from the server is also promising. It's saying that the coffee order has been placed. Let's go ahead and take a look at the server. Maybe we can refresh one of the URLs of the server and get all the coffee orders. In the documentation, they have provided this URL, which is used to get all the orders. Let's open up this in a new window. There we go. Congratulations, you have actually placed an order. This is the same exact order that we filled out and we placed. So now we can actually see our order if we go to the API URL provided by the documentation. Our next step would be to display all the orders on our screen. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that.